Welcome to the CHCH Newsmakers podcast. I'm your host, Rick Zamperin. If it's making news in Hamilton, Halton, and Niagara, across Canada or around the world, it's going to land here on Newsmakers. Barton Street in North Hamilton was once a bustling strip of shops and restaurants, and now there are efforts underway to make it a hot spot in the city once again. Nadine Ubl is the executive director of Barton Village, and they join us on Newsmakers. Nadine, thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
Your impression of Barton Street and Barton Village right now, what do you think when I mention those two entities?
Yeah, I think for a long time we've had sort of a reputation that precedes us, and not necessarily in a great way. The reputation's been around for some time that that area of the city is dirty and dangerous. I can tell you as a person that's down there every single day that that's not the case, but for whatever reason that reputation has been around for a long time.
I think, well, there's been crime down there, and there's crime across the city, but there's also boarded up shops, and we see, Barton Street was once Ontario's worst road, and I know there's been efforts to improve that, and certain stretches are much better than they were. Mm-hmm. So I think that kind of feeds to the perception, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I think we're number 2 worst street now in the country, right. Second only to...
I think it was Aberdeen.
Yeah, it was Aberdeen,
in
of all places. Yeah, so it definitely does add to that. And there have been some efforts in some stretches. It's a long stretch of street, right? It's like 21 kilometers or something. So there are sections that have seen some investment. Barton Village stretches from Ferguson Avenue in the west to Sherman Avenue in the east. So it is quite a long stretch of that section, and that's the section that I'm responsible for. Right. So that's... it's sort of the heart of Barton Village, right around sort of Woodlands Park is sort of the center of it.
Before we get into what could potentially happen at City Hall, city staff is going to study how to make this area of the city much better. But what are business owners saying in that stretch?
They are hopeful, believe it or not, still hopeful. I mean, I have articles in my office that are 30, 40 years old that say Barton's turning a corner. So the hope is still there. People are choosing that area to start their businesses and continue to operate their businesses, and they're doing so intentionally. But I think there's sort of this perception that they're not sure whether they're going to be able to hang on as long as it's going to take for things to really turn a corner.
Mm-hmm. So the opportunity is there. Mm-hmm. They're making an investment, and there's some positive feedback, but there's got to be some negative stuff too. What are you hearing from a negative standpoint on the challenges that they face?
Yeah, sure. I think foot traffic is always an issue. We don't see the foot traffic that you might see, say, on Locke Street or in the downtown core. And I think part of that has to do with the infrastructure that exists along there. The sidewalks are much narrower than they are in other parts of the city. There's some challenges with infrastructure in particular, and that's hopefully what this study is going to help to identify.
So city staff have been instructed to look at this area and think about improvements. What do you think they're going to come back with?
My hope is that it's going to be this is going to be a multi-pronged approach. Obviously, there is long-term investment intended for Barton Street. We won't see that happen for another 10 years, likely. So the idea is to sort of identify some short-term, mid-range, and long-term goals, and then look at the low-hanging fruit. What things can we do right now that will help to inform the way that this redesign looks 10 years down the road?
So short-term, what are some of the options?
Yeah, I mean, there's some major infrastructure stuff that needs to happen, and it's basically just neglect. There's street lighting in medians along some sections of Barton Village that, the lights have been removed or they've been damaged, hit by cars, and they just are existing that way. There hasn't been any sort of replacement or repair of some of those items. So that would be a good, easy place to start.
Mid-range level, we're talking a little bit more investment, more heavy lifting? Yeah,
looking at some things like changing curbs to be a little bit more pedestrian friendly, wider sidewalks, hopefully. I know that there's some infrastructure sort of underneath the roadway as well that needs to be addressed, so those things would need to get pushed probably to a long-term plan. But there's certainly sort of things that can be done in various capacities over the next 10 years before we see this big investment go in.
Do you have a wish list on what should be first? What's the biggest item?
I'd love to see it all happen today, but being realistic and looking at, there are budgetary constraints that go along with this. So those are things that we need to plan for down the road, and we need to do it smart. And I think the idea behind this study is that we get all of the sort of key players at the table to be involved in the planning of what this thing is going to look like. to just have, a third party or consultant or somebody come in and say this is how it should look, it wouldn't necessarily reflect what the neighborhood needs. So I think community engagement and making sure that all the key players are at the table.
How big of a part does private investment play in all this?
It does, to the degree that private investment is certainly influenced by what the current state is and what the future state will look like. So we do have people reach out to our office to say, hey, can you tell us about the neighborhood and what plans are coming? We can speak to that, but we have to be honest and say, like, we are some time away from major investment. If we can start to say, yes, there's things happening today, we might see that private investment come in sooner.
Yeah. What kind of businesses are gravitating to Barton Village?
Everything. There's lots of great food spots that are open, some of the best food in the city, realistically, and it's a great sort of corridor to be able to pop from one end to the other, but we don't see that flow of traffic in the same way that some other parts of the city do, so that's what we're after.
Is transit also a kind of thorn in your side? Can that be better as well?
The number 2 runs the length of Barton. It's a very popular bus. Again, maybe not for the best reasons. Right. So the infrastructure is there, but could it be better? It could be better all over the city. I've lived in cities where the public transportation is terrible in comparison. So we're very, very fortunate that way. And it does play a role in the larger conversation of what that's going to look like. We recognize that when shovels go in the ground for LRT, we're going to see a lot of traffic move down to Barton. And are we prepared for that? I would say today the answer is no.
Right. So how do you get prepared? What is the plan?
Yeah, I think we need to realistically look at what the time frame is for that, and then think about what is the actual intention of the street. Is it intended as a throughfare to the hospital and back, or is it intended, as it once was, as a commercial corridor? It can't do both, so we need to be smart about how we plan in the future for what the use of that street is going to be.
Could you, because LRT is going to have a huge impact, both positive and negative,
yeah.
The front of it's going to be negative, especially for business owners along the downtown strip. Is there a plan to entice those businesses to say, hey, set up a pop-up shop at least at Barton and see how it feels?
Yeah, I think this is part of where we have to lean back on the city in terms of looking at incentives that really work for business owners. There's a robust incentive program specifically for Barton and for Kenilworth. The question is, does that incentive actually translate into applications and investors really looking at those incentives as enticing enough to come in ahead of what could be a bit of a mess in terms of LRT?
Yeah. And at the end of the day, you want those businesses that do come to Barton Street to actually stay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's nice to have new businesses come in and pop up, but we do want that longevity. This was once the commercial corridor. We jokingly call it the OG Hamilton. So to be able to entice those businesses to come and stay and have people fall in love with them and continue to come back would be fantastic.
What's your best guess? I've heard a number of different kind of scenarios as to what was the body check that supplanted Barton Street as that kind of economic hub, at least in terms of businesses. Was it Limeridge Mall? Was it Jackson Square? A combination of both?
Yeah, I think it's a couple of different things. So, that the dirty and dangerous perception sort of started early in the 70s. There was the Bramalea Blues was a hockey team that was supposed to come and play at the Forum, and they canceled the game, and they said that the area was rough, and that's why they didn't want to come here. And for some reason, this made national headlines, and it stuck. And as a result, we've been fighting that perception ever since. Then we had, obviously we had some steel factories that shut down during the 80s and 90s. That really impacted the area. Then there was this push towards like larger commercial malls, Center Mall being one of them, which was a really big pull away from sort of that commercial storefront like on the street. And as a result, that kind of pushed people to the larger malls and things. Then, in '94, then Premier Bob Rae made a commitment of $5 million to create what did they call it? Sort of like an arts hub within Barton that corridor where Barton Village is now. And that was supposed to also be met with $5 million that were sitting in reserve funding around housing. So a $10 million investment in this arts hub. A year later, obviously, Bob Ray was no longer around. Mike Harris came in and he axed the funding. We got access to $1 million to be able to repave the road. And that was the extent of the funding. So it was sort of this like promise and then disappointment. And it's been that over and over again. I think we're at a point where we're done listening to promises and we're ready for action.
Do upper levels of government need to sit at the table in terms of revitalizing this part of the city?
Again, I think it's a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah.
There's definitely the potential to be able to work with both provincial and federal, just to look at what options are available, in particular on the incentives piece. So maybe there's a possibility to do that. Those deals can take a long time. So again, are we willing to wait another 5-10 years before we see that investment, or are there things that we can do right now? We're trying to look at least the BIA is trying to look at things from sort of a tactical urbanism strategy, which is to say, temporary, low-cost initiatives that can help to demonstrate the need for things like traffic calming and wider sidewalks and bike lanes and things like that, parkettes, things that we can really demonstrate that these things are of value to the community and to the business owners and help to push change makers to make the changes.
You look at other areas of Hamilton, Locke Street, Ottawa Street North, King William, areas of the city that have really been revitalized with local businesses, small businesses. That must offer some optimism and some hope for Barton Street.
Yeah, 100%. I will say that over the last 2 years, we have seen businesses from those areas specifically choose Barton and move to Barton. I think it's just, at some point you have to think about what's going to be most cost effective as a business owner. And as lease rates start to go up in some of those other areas, we still have some of the most affordable lease rates on Barton Street. So it becomes an option for business owners to look at.
Back to City Hall, what's the timeline for this study? How long are they going to look at this?
I was told Q1 that we're gonna get started. So it's imminent. If it was up to me, we would have started yesterday. Yeah. So I'm ready to sit at the table and at least be the voice for the businesses along the street and the property owners. We represent 145 properties and over 200 businesses. So I'm ready to go.
Has this decision to reinvigorate or try to find ways to reinvigorate Barton, has it offered or created a buzz in this section of the city?
Yeah, for sure. We certainly have, like Hamilton City Magazine, for example, will reach out to say, like, hey, we'd like to do a story on the food-based businesses. We've had the Spec reach out and, other media outlets, obviously, to say, hey, like, something is happening. We can't quite put our finger on whether or not this is sort of the thing that's going to really start to make changes down there, but we want to be in on the initial conversations, so.
What are some of the things that must happen in Barton Village on Barton Street for it to get to that level?
Yeah, potholes would be an easy win. Yeah, just, if you didn't have to dodge and weave your car down the street, it would be safer for drivers and pedestrians. That would be a super easy win. It seems ridiculous that we even have to put that on the list, but that would be a big win, I think.
Where do we go from here in terms of businesses and the community saying, this is an investment that needs to happen? Do you feel that kind of coming? Yeah.
100%. And it has been since the day I've been with the BIA for 3 years. And since the day I started, I've been getting those emails of like, what's happening? How are we advocating to the city? It feels like of the 12 BIAs that Barton Village has always had sort of the quietest voice. And I don't know if the board made a mistake or a step in the right direction when they hired me, so I'm not a quiet person. I said in my delegation with regards to this motion, it's going to be a yes, so it might as well be now. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah. What drew you to this role? Because, Barton Street, as you mentioned, for years has been a tough nut to crack.
Yeah. So I come from a completely unrelated background in construction, health and safety, and HR. Was sort of my my career, but I've always owned small businesses along the way. I come from a family of serial entrepreneurs, and I used to have a business, a co-working space actually, in International Village, and sat on their board. So I was familiar with BIAs and what they do, and have a passion for small businesses and helping them. So when this role came up, I thought, let's step away from my corporate role, which took me out of the city a lot of times, and come back home and make some impact here.
Do BIAs work together to say, hey, we got a great idea, it's working here, you should use it too?
Yeah, we try. We definitely try. We're all governed individually, so and we're not city staff. We're not, we're not necessarily responsible to the city in that way. So it gives us a lot of freedom to be able to come up with different ideas and try them out. But we do. We have a subcommittee, a BIA subcommittee, of which I became chair in January. So we try our best to try and bring the ideas to the table and share them. Why reinvent the wheel? If something's working in one place, why not try it in others?
What are some of the hidden gems of Barton Village?
Oh man, you're gonna put me on the spot. Maisie's Pearl, some of the best oysters in the city, shucked fresh, and David is phenomenal. If you get a chance to sit at the bar and have a chat with David about oysters, that's definitely one. Barton Slow Maria as well, fantastic drinks menu. Hottie Smash Burgers, Henry's Barbershop, and Parquet, which is maybe the cutest toy store for people ages 9 months to 99 years. Fantastic spot too.
Why should people go to Barton Street?
Oh man, why shouldn't they? There's lots of different reasons. I think it has just this potential, but also this like gritty representation of what Hamilton truly is. Yeah. It's definitely worth checking out. We do see a lot of tourism, a lot of folks from other parts of the city that will come in. My Pie is a good example of that, where they draw food tours from all over the place, pizza tours in particular. I think there's one happening today, actually. This is the kind of place where you've got to book a reservation 4 weeks out. The trick is getting those people from out of town and from within the city to come and stay, rather than come for dinner and then leave.
Right. So how do you do that as a BIA? Like, what's the plan?
Yeah, you just got to make it enticing. I think we haven't done a really great job in terms of sort of that nighttime economy, and I know that Tourism Hamilton is really focused in this area right now. So we actually took over the lease on a lot, an empty lot, where our gateway sign is, right at Barton and Earl. And we're going to be doing some really cool sort of placemaking stuff there and helping to lean into that nighttime economy a little bit.
All right. Anything else we should know, or anything in the hopper that you have ready to go?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can tell you is you can mark your calendars for June 13th. That's going to be Barton Village Festival this year, and there's some surprises in the works for that this year. Yeah. Okay.
Well, we'll end on that cliffhanger. Nadine, thanks for joining us today, and we'll certainly keep tabs on what City Hall comes up with, and maybe have you back on the podcast.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me.
All right, and that is a wrap on the Newsmakers podcast. A big thank you to the all-star cast behind the scenes. If you like today's episode, click the thumbs up, hit subscribe, leave a comment as well. You can catch the Newsmakers podcast on chch.com/podcasts and wherever you get your favorite podcasts.